In the grand chessboard of global politics, not all wars are fought out in the open. Sometimes the most important conflicts, the ones that really shape our world, are waged from the shadows, guided by, well, an unseen hand of power. Welcome to The Explainer.
So let's start with a huge question, right? In a world that's packed with nuclear weapons, how do major powers actually fight each other? How do they jockey for position, weaken their rivals, and spread their influence without kicking off a global catastrophe? It's an incredibly high-stakes game, and one of the most used moves is something called a proxy war.
And the answer, really, is fighting by remote control. A proxy war is basically where a big power, let's call them the sponsor, finds and backs a local group, the proxy, to do the actual fighting for them. The sponsor gets what they want, but, and this is the most important part, they get to keep their own hands officially clean. Okay, so to really get how this all works, we need to break down the two main roles in this whole geopolitical drama. Every single proxy war has these key players. So on one side, you've got the sponsor. This is the big external power, the one pulling the strings, sending the money, the weapons, the intel. Their main goal, achieve some strategic aim without putting their own soldiers in harm's way. And then, on the other side, you've got the proxy. Now, this could be a rebel group, or it could even be another country's government. But here's the critical piece you have to remember. The proxy is never just a puppet. They have their own reasons for fighting. They want political power, or independence, or maybe just to survive. It's really just a temporary alliance where, for a little while, their goals happen to line up. So why? Why go this indirect route? I mean, why fight from the shadows? Well, let's dive into the sponsor's playbook, because it all comes down to a really cold, hard calculation of risk versus reward. The reasons are kind of layered. At its heart, it's about strategic competition. It's a way to bleed a rival dry without you having to fire a single shot. It can be ideological, like the big Cold War showdowns between capitalism and communism. It might be about economics, securing oil fields or key shipping lanes. Or maybe it's just about installing a friendly government to get more influence in a region. But holding all of these reasons together is one master key: plausible deniability. And the logic becomes crystal clear when you stack them up side by side. A direct war? It's insanely expensive, both in money and in lives. The risk of things spinning out of control is huge, and you need massive public support to even get it off the ground. But a proxy war? It's way cheaper. The risk is basically outsourced. It can be done in secret. And most importantly for the sponsor, their own troops aren't the ones coming home in caskets. It's a brutal calculation, for sure, but from a purely strategic view, it's a rational one. So how exactly does a sponsor manage to support a war without getting their fingerprints all over the crime scene? Well, they've got a pretty well-established toolkit for that. See, support isn't just an on or off switch. It's more like a ladder. You escalate your commitment over time. It almost always starts small: some cash, a few speeches of support. If that doesn't do the trick, you climb to the next rung, providing weapons, training fighters, sharing some key intelligence. And when the stakes get really high, you might be sending in advanced missiles or drones, or even so-called advisors on the ground, all while trying to stay just below that red line of direct war. But through this entire process, from the very first dollar they send to the very last bullet that's fired, the sponsor is governed by one single, absolute golden rule: maintain plausible deniability. The entire strategy, the whole thing, hangs on this one idea. It is the art of being involved enough to win, but staying detached enough to deny everything if it all goes wrong. The real goal here is to create a fog of war, a cloud of ambiguity. So weapons get funneled through third-party countries, money gets laundered through shell companies, intelligence is shared in secret meetings. All of this makes it almost impossible for anyone to definitively prove who's really behind it, and that shields the sponsor from any real accountability. But this strategic game, played by powerful countries from thousands of miles away, it has a devastating price. And that price? It's not paid by the sponsors. It's paid by the people and the nations that become the chessboard, weaving behind this awful legacy of destruction. And let's bring this down to a very stark reality. The Syrian civil war, which is a textbook modern proxy war, has forced over 14 million people from their homes. And that's not just some statistic. That is a generation of people lost to a conflict that was fueled by the competing interests of Russia, Iran, the US, and so many others, all backing different sides. You see, the initial conflict is just the first domino to fall. The flood of foreign weapons, it doesn't just stay with the intended group, it spreads everywhere, arming extremists and fueling conflicts for years to come. all that chaos creates a power vacuum, which is the perfect breeding ground for radical groups. And finally, the violence and the refugee crises, they almost never stay put. They spill over borders, and they can destabilize entire regions. And the scars, they last for generations. The country itself just crumbles, replaced by warlords. The wars don't have clean endings. They just simmer and bubble for decades. You have entire societies that are traumatized. And with all the infrastructure destroyed, any real hope for development or recovery is just gone. Now, even with these horrifying consequences, this strategy is not going away. Not at all. In fact, it's evolving. So, what does a proxy war actually look like in the 21st century? Well, the new battlefield has a new name: hybrid war. We're not just talking about arming rebels in a jungle anymore. This is a super sophisticated mix of old-school tactics and brand-new tools of disruption. And this is where you can really see the shift. The key tools aren't just rifles and tanks anymore. Today, it's armed drones, crippling cyber attacks against power grids, and deniable private military contractors. The battleground isn't some remote piece of territory. It's social media, it's financial markets, it's using disinformation campaigns to tear a country apart from the inside. The whole nature of the fight has just fundamentally changed. And all of this leaves us with one final, chilling question. In a world full of hidden wars fought from the shadows, who is ever really held responsible? And who is always, always left to pay the ultimate price?